Wow, spring has truly sprung. My parents are watching YouTube videos, the birds are chirping, I'm sweaty. It's been a while because I had a bit of a crisis with my YouTube channel. I have been feeling the last few months just very uninspired to talk about books on the internet. I've just been in a rut, and normally I can get myself out of ruts very easily. Like, I just need a couple days and then I'm like, okay, I'm over it. But I have been in a serious rut about it, and I haven't really been enjoying making videos. So I wanted to do something about that rut. So I finally joined booktok. Really, this came from two different situations. One, I heard so many booktubers that I really love talking about how much more satisfying booktok was for them and how it got them out of their rut. Like, they're booktubers like myself who have been doing this for a really long time, and it's just been a really fun outlet, and it's been great for them. And then the other two of my friends sort of lightly bullied me into doing it. So in combination, I started a booktok, and last year I did a video where I read popular booktok books, and that was really to just go, I don't know if this is for me, because I was uneducated. Now I know, hey, booktok, like booktube, has it all. It has it all, and it's actually really fun. So I've been booktalking now for about a week, and to get myself acquainted, I wanted to read more booktok books. So I decided to read 6 books. I have already read the first 3, and I wanted to do this first part where I talk about the first 3, and then I'm going to read the next 3 and do a second part still in this video. This isn't a 2-part video. I just decided to film it this way. So instead of like giving you a traditional vlog, because I got bored of doing that, I'll insert some clips here of me experiencing these books. So we're going to start off with the first book that I read for this video, and that is The Atlas 6. The Atlas 6 is a book that I had never heard of, and then all of a sudden I saw it everywhere. I saw it on every like booktok picks table at Barnes & Noble. I saw it all over the internet. I just saw it everywhere, and I was like, okay, this is an adult dark academia book. Although I didn't realize it was adult until reading it. I thought it was young adult, but it's adult. I think that, side note, that is kind of an issue that booktok has, which is that sometimes it's really hard to tell when a book is adult, new adult, or young adult. That was my problem through this entire video, basically, so far at least. So the Atlas 6 follows 6 people who have sort of pseudo-magical abilities, and they get recruited to join this secret society who does scholarly things. I'm not entirely sure. To be honest, I found this book very difficult to follow, partially because I have a tiny brain, but also because I found the world building to be lacking clarity. Honestly, I listened to this book on audiobook, and by the end of it, I couldn't even really remember most of it. But I had some issues with this book. Partially that, and partially, this book suffered from something that I think a lot of dark academia books suffer from, which is too many words in a sentence syndrome. It just reminds me a lot of like SAT prep. How many big words can you throw into a sentence to make your characters sound smart without actually showing that they're smart, just sort of like telling us that they're smart by cramming all these words into a sentence? I was very frustrated by that. I was also frustrated with the fact that this book just seemed like it didn't go far enough with its characters. A couple of them I felt like were fully realized people, but I didn't have a visceral understanding of most of them. And when I think of books similar to this, I think of like this one, which I read for a video, and its name is currently escaping me, but I think does a really good job. It's very visceral. You get a good understanding of these characters in this dark academia setting. Or I think about Catherine House, which doesn't have a big ensemble cast, but that book is haunting and very specific, and really does a good job of having that danger, you know, kind of looming across this magical society, or this secret society that has magic in it. I just wanted more of that, and I feel like we had a lot of telling without showing. We didn't really get any action until the end of the book, and I felt like we could have had more of it throughout the book. It could have had more plot instead of people just talking a lot. So I didn't really like this book. I don't think it's particularly bad, but I don't quite understand why it's so popular, because I don't think it does what it wants to do very well. Anyway, here are some reactions of me reading it. I have like two major thoughts. One, the guy just made fun of project managers. That's what I do. So, and number two, God, there are so many like shoehorned big words happening here. It's reminding me a lot of Cassandra Clare's City of Bones. And it seems like this isn't YA. It seems like it's post-college because they're graduating from like a magical school at NYU. So I'm out of breath. I just am feeling like this book reminds me of like a sci-fi channel show, if you know what I mean. Like it has the vibes of a sci-fi channel show. I like sci-fi channel shows, don't get me wrong, but that is the vibe. I guess I'm like halfway, and y'all, what is that? Bobby pin. I don't understand what's happening again. Like, I get the main idea of the book. I'm trying to give it, like, my full attention as much as I'm able to, and it's, like, not at the level of, like, the Roshni Chachki series, that's name is escaping me all of a sudden, the Gilded Wolves. That series is similar vibes, but so much better. So, anyway, we're gonna keep reading. She stopped reading. Next book. Next, I read the Spanish Love Deception. I feel like this book in the last few months has really blown up both on BookTube and BookTok and BookTwitter. I've seen it everywhere, and it also suffered from the Emma thinking this book is YA when it's actually an adult romance. The cover reminded me a lot of a young adult romance cover, but it's not. It's an adult book, sort of fake dating, convenient situation, enemies to lovers, workplace romance, traveling situation. It really does have all the tropes, including, I do believe, a one-bed trope. So just cramming them in there. To put it nicely, I hated this book. That's me putting it nicely. This book is about two people who have been working together for a long time at an engineering firm, and they don't really get along. Specifically, the main character doesn't get along with the guy character, and one day she's talking about how she has her sister's wedding coming up in Spain, and she is the maid of honor, and her ex-boyfriend who left her is the best man, and how she lied to her parents and said that she was bringing a date, so everyone would stop pitying her. So this guy that she works with, who she doesn't even like, is like, I'll go with you, I'll be your date. Meanwhile, this happens like in the first few pages of this book, and we've had no basis for this relationship at all. She takes him up on the offer because she feels like she has no other options, and it's just awkward. She's giving very quirky girl vibes, not like other girls, and he has no personality, like at all, except for liking her and wanting to be there for her. It's so boring. They end up, for most of this book, being in this office romance. I personally don't like office romances. I don't think there's anything really romantic about office romances, so I don't enjoy reading them. Like, I want fantasy, I want drama, I want fun. Ignore the air. You know what? I'll turn it off. Thank you for turning off. The last half of this book, they're in Spain for this wedding. I thought this was going to be fun. I thought it would at least be entertaining. But just like the Atlas 6, this book really lacked a sense of place. Like, you're in Spain. I want to feel like you're in Spain. That can be very romantic and exciting to write about two people falling for each other at a wedding. And it just didn't have that. It was just so boring. Like, the last half of this book is so painfully boring. The miscommunication is boring. I didn't care about any of these characters. And while the Atlas 6 had some merit to it in the fact that the last, 50 pages were kind of fun, this book, none of it was fun. I did not enjoy any of it. It had a good audiobook, and that's the nicest thing I can say about it. So, here's what I thought about while reading it. I got a chapter in, and I have to restart the chapter because I was only half paying attention and missed all of it. So that's just to tell you where my brain is at right now. So far we have some fatphobic sort of comments. Also, I have no idea, the guy, is insistent that he wants to be her, date,
And I get, like, potentially a excuse to go to Spain, but it's just weird. Like, and I'm sure it's gonna get revealed, like, that he always loved her or something, but it's not being set up very well, you know, like, why he wants to go with her to do her this huge favor. I can't even get these words out. One, they have not even gone to Spain yet, and I'm halfway through the GD book. Two, so not interested in office romances. I think they're really boring, and I thought this was going to be in Spain at a wedding. But nope, we have still a lot of office stuff going. So she has, like, a disordered relationship with eating, and ends up, like, not eating, and so she can, like, lose weight for this wedding, and she ends up fainting, and the guy, the love interest, that she has this, like, fake dating, love/hate, boss, underling relationship with, layers and layers of tropes. Too many tropes. Finds her, and he just gets really mad at her for not eating, instead of being like, are you okay? Do we need to, like, find you a counselor? Like, are you all right? This is very scary and concerning. He just gets really mad at her. He takes care of her, but his first reaction is getting really pissed off. So, saying all of this, I hate this book so far.
Sorry. And then finally, for this first part, I read A Court of Mist and Fury by Miss Sarah J. Maas. I thought I would never read any more Sarah J. Maas books, but I was talking to my dear friend Hannah recently, who has read them all. She doesn't like them, but she read them all and enjoyed the experience, if that makes sense. So I felt like, sure, why not? And Sarah J. Maas is hugely popular in booktok, or at least was at one point. So I said, okay, I'll read the second one. This book, oh my gosh, I really did not like A Court of Thorn and Roses. I thought it was boring for the most part, and I just found Freya, or whatever her name is, so annoying. This book was better. I think that it was more entertaining. This is a 20-hour audiobook, and really the end was the only part where I was like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. For the most part, it was absolutely fine background sort of audiobook situation. I wasn't entranced, but I didn't hate it. There are, of course, things that I did not like about this book. I definitely have a problem with the way women are described in Sarah J. Maas books. They feel like they fit into, like, two categories, which are like, oh my gosh, I'm so nice and wonderful and sweet, girl next door, or that demon, and yeah. And the only reason why I ended up liking Freya, or whatever her name is, more in this book is she switched from to, and at least that is more interesting to me, personally. We also have this Uno reverse where the hero of the first book, Tamlin, ends up being an abusive partner in this book, and the bad guy in the first book, Rice Sand or whatever, ends up being the hero who just had to kind of be mean and horrible in the first book in order to protect his family in this book situation. While I did like the relationship between Freya and Rysand or whatever more than Tamlin and Freya, like much more, I still just like don't care. Also, the spicy parts in this book are so gross to me and I hate it, and I can't believe at one point these books were being shelved in young adult sections. That is truly shocking to me. I did actually like the side characters, and I liked the world building. It was much more whimsical and fun and entertaining, although I did have the thought of, do they have convection ovens in this world? Because I wouldn't be surprised. Like, sometimes it just felt like Sarah J. Maas got tired of the fantasy world building and just would put a microwave in there just for funsies. I will say, though, that I did find some of the plot elements confusing. Like, I didn't really understand what was going on. And I think that's the greatest weakness, besides the depiction of women, is the lack of clarity with the plot points. It is saying something, though, that this book, out of the three I've read so far, was the most enjoyable. That scares me. Anyway, here's what I thought about when I was reading A Court of Mist and Fury. We really do angles on this channel. Interesting angles. I don't know where I am at with A Court of Misty Mountains, or whatever the hell it's called. 7 hours and 18 minutes left at 2x speed. So I think I'm like a quarter of the way in. I will say I like this book way more than the first book. the issues I have it still stand. Like, every time Farrah, or whatever her name is, I just think of this girl from Teen Mom. I don't know. There's not a lot to say. I'm not hating it, but I am not particularly loving it, and the spicy scenes are gross. I'm really sick of this book. It is, without being on double speed, it's like a 20-hour audiobook or 22-hour audiobook, so it's just incredibly long, and I'm getting very bored. I have 4 hours left. I would put it at like 2.2, 2.5, but I'm on Scribd, and Scribd doesn't have anything between 2 and 3. And 3 only works on the computer. So, I don't know, y'all. I'm just like grossed out by a lot of the stuff that happens in this book, so.
3 feet between me and the stream. Lucian's eye widened slightly. We need to get out of here.
Ew. Just ew.
I finally finished this book.
Welcome to part 2. Before I get started, I want to show y'all my amazing hoodie. This is the hoodie that I designed, romance tropes. You know, we got them all. Half the proceeds go to climate crisis orgs, the other half go to Texas trans rights orgs. And yeah, they're super comfortable and cute, and they're in springy pastel colors, and they're great. I love them. So link down below. I'd like some wine. I also have some general TikTok thoughts because I've now been on booktok for a couple weeks, and I love it. Genuinely, I'm having a great time. It's so much fun. It's very satisfying. I get why booktubers have really enjoyed being on booktok, especially booktubers who have been doing this for a long time, like making booktube videos for a long time. It's just very satisfying. Sometimes it's quite repetitive in a way that I think, because of the length of booktube, doesn't happen as much here, but I think it can be really fun and hyper-specific and be extra fun to find like new people and find new creators and find books you haven't heard of. So yes, I'm having a good time. Follow me down below. So the last 3 books I read were, well, I found the first 3 books having merit, meaning that I can see why some people would enjoy those books, except for The Spanish Love Deception. This was less of that. Less of that. Just less of that. Anyway, I read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I had actually read a Jennifer L. Armentrout book before. I read this book that's name is escaping me forever and ever and ever ago, and it was an absolute hot mess, but a hot mess that I did enjoy. Now, I kind of expected that. I was like, I remember enjoying that book. I didn't think it was good, but I had fun while reading it. However, I hated this one. Hated it. I need to turn off whatever Norway movie my mom's watching downstairs. I should note she wasn't watching it. It was just on. Anyway, From Blood and Ash. Basically, this is a new adult book, meaning that it feels like young adult, but there's grown-up things in it, if you know what I mean. The main character is 18 going on 19, and interesting, right? We don't get that a lot. Interesting, 18 going on 19. That is something that Jennifer L. Armentrout did differently here. Because she wasn't 16, she was 18 going on 19, you know? Anyway, she is the chosen one. She is the maiden. Her parents were killed by some people, don't remember, don't care to remember, and she basically gets chosen by the queen, by the duchesses, the royalty, to become the maiden, to be special, special, special. And she has feely powers where she basically can pick up on a deep level what someone's feeling, who somebody is, like their truth, all of that very emotional Jean Grey kind of vibe. She, at the beginning of the book, is deciding to sow her wild oats, and she goes out and she goes to this club that has sex workers at it, and she ends up seeing the captain of her guard there, and he's been secretly training her. She's not supposed to have any training skills, so she's like, I gotta get away from him. He can't know I'm here because a maiden can never, ever, they're nuns. So she runs upstairs, ends up being in this room, and she starts making out with this guy, and he's like really attractive guy, and she knows who he is. He's like this really young guy in their military, and he doesn't know who she is. It's very weird, you know? So she like kind of lies and is like, I'm this other person. Ends up being that people start attacking the place that she lives and this dukedom that she lives in, and the duke is this really bad guy, and this other guy is a really bad guy. Basically, the men in this book are bad, and all the good men die. So, all that happens and she starts to fall for our good boy Hawk, as I want to say his name. I only remember it because I always remember bird names. So they have to run away because bad things are happening and go to the king and queen. And that's basically what this book is. Honestly, a lot of it just I found very boring and I wasn't paying attention. Why didn't I not like this book? I didn't like it because of everything I just said. The plot itself did nothing for me, and at times just felt like a young adult book with very adult scenes. I felt it to be very violent in a very specific way, like sexually violent, and it was all very romanticized, but I found it to be a lot. I thought that this book was also very tropey without doing anything different with any of the tropes, which bothered me. If you're going to do a tropey book, do something different with the tropes, you know, or at least write the tropes well. And we just had like, not like other girls. We had, you know, big plot twists that was super not surprising. We had The Chosen One. We had a very generic fantasy setting. Nothing here was done in an interesting way. Like, I hate to say it, it was a poor man's Sarah J. Maas. And I'm not even a Sarah J. Maas fan. But at the same time, I can get why people would enjoy this book. I can get why people would get into it if they're a fan of fantasy, if they're a fan of female-led fantasy. I understand it. Personally, though, I hated it. So, cheers to that. I don't think I have a ton of updates from when I was reading it, but, you know, roll clip.
I literally just started this book and I have no idea what's going on. Was it a good idea to go back-to-back fantasy? Maybe not. I don't understand. Macedonia? What?
Okay, that was fun. All right, let's talk about the next book. This book was the worst book I think I have ever read. Maybe? Close to it? It's the Sweet Oblivion / Sweet Obsession. I don't remember. I think it's the Sweet Oblivion or the Sweetest Oblivion. Something sweet and something with an O. Whatever. It's by a woman who I found out after I read the book is very problematic. I will note why she's problematic in the comments in the down box down there. Blah. It did not surprise me when I learned of this fact. This is a very popular mafia romance book about a grown woman, I actually don't know her age. I think she's like early 20s, I want to say. They never really say her age. But she grew up with a father who's like a mafia don. Think, you know, The Sopranos, but a million times worse. And her younger sister is supposed to be married off to this other mafia don who's apparently really hot because the main character ran off with a guy as like a one-night stand, and her family murdered the guy. She's untouchable because she's been touched. But of course, it's a little bit of a forced arranged marriage where she is forced to end up marrying the main guy who's supposed to marry her sister. This book is, okay. I want to start off by saying that I understand that the mafia is of a different world. I don't know anything about the mafia except for what I've seen on The Sopranos. However, I think that you can have this outdated system.
And what I mean by outdated is the patriarchal hold that is so old school that happens in this book. That's what I mean by outdated. The patriarchal, traditional 1950s hold.
Without romanticizing the sheer amount of misogyny in this book, like very questionable consent, and also racism, like, I really didn't like this book. I hated reading it. I found it to be very disturbing, very uncomfortable. You know, I think Katie Robert does a much better job of writing like this mafia, mobster, arranged marriage, aggressive book, dark romance. So much better. Like a million times better than this. A million times better than this. Like, if that is your vibe and that's what you like to read, there are authors who do it so much better. And reading it isn't just misogynistic comment after misogynistic comment with absolutely no pushback. Absolutely no pushback from literally anybody. So I don't know. I get people like what they like, but I don't really understand this one. And it doesn't help that the author is also just like a really not good person. So anyway, I also don't think I have a ton of updates for this book either, but here you go.
The way the narrator, who's portraying an Italian-American woman, says mama is so laughable. She's just speaking in just like a regular, smegular American accent. No Long Island in it, nothing New York in it. And she'll say, mamma, a mamma, a nonna, a mamma. I was walking down the street and I saw my mamma. It's difficult for me.
Sure did hate this book.
I finished the stupid book, and it was...
Finally, I finally read a Colleen Hoover book. I read It Ends With Us. I thought booktok loves Colleen Hoover. BookTube, a long time ago at least, loved Colleen Hoover. I have never read a Colleen Hoover book, and now I have. I read this one because I just saw it on the most BookTok lists, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. This book is about our main character. She dreams of opening up a plant store. Spoiler alert, she doesn't. And she had a really difficult past. Her father was really abusive to her mother, and when she was a young girl, she met this boy named Atlas. Again, can only remember his name because it's weird, as they always are. There's dust in the air. I'm not just randomly doing this, doing ASMR or something. Atlas is unhoused, and she takes care of him. They end up forming a really deep friendship bond, romantic relationship when she's a teenager, and then he goes off to the military. She thinks she's never going to see him again. And in the present day, because this book moves between the present and the past, she meets this guy. He's a doctor. He's a full catch. He ends up being the brother of her best friend in this book, and they have like a whirlwind romance. They get married, all this good stuff, but he also is abusive. He starts being abusive towards her, and she starts realizing she's sort of in the same pattern that her mother is in, and this book is basically about her dealing with that abuse. And I actually listened to the author's note at the end, and Colleen Hoover said, with permission from her mother, pulled a lot of this from her mother's experience and her mother's lived experience. And I really like the fact that we had that author's note for her to talk about that. Saying all of that, I think this book is amazingly well paced. I think this book is very gripping. I like the fact that I really did not know what the main character was going to do. I felt that dramatic tension as she's in this impossible situation, horrible situation. I just felt that was done well, at least from my perspective. But I also had trouble with the characters. I felt like they were a little fanfiction-y, and I know fanfiction is great. I mean fanfiction-y in a like not good fanfiction way. Like they felt like they just weren't real people. They didn't feel like fully realized human beings. And that was difficult for me. Like their character growth was real, but like who were they? Like what was their personality? Because I think you can have character growth without having necessarily a personality. I know that doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. Also, the main character's comfort character, if you will, comfort celebrity is Ellen DeGeneres. Like when she was growing up, she would write letters that she wouldn't send to Ellen DeGeneres. And her thing is like Ellen DeGeneres and Dory from Finding Nemo. I understand Dory from Finding Nemo, and I understand Ellen DeGeneres, I do. But also Ellen DeGeneres, just because recently, I know this book is not like super, super new. She like is a bully. Like it came out that she's like a really big bully. So I just found that really funny. And anytime that got brought up, it kind of made me laugh and pulled me out of the story. That's why I don't like referencing people, celebrities in books. Anyway, yes. So I read it. I get why people like it, but I have complicated feelings about it, if that makes sense. Okay. I also don't think I have a ton of updates, but we'll roll the clip and then we'll do a little wrap up.
You mean to tell me that this girl writes letters to Ellen DeGeneres? I get why people like Colleen Hoover, because this book is very gripping. I am gripped.
Alright, so this video took me quite a while, and it really was fun. I didn't rate anything over 2.5 stars. I think Court of Mist and Fury and It Ends With Us, I gave 2.5 stars. Everything else was under that. So it's not like I necessarily really loved anything I read. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I had fun with it. And I had a good time. This video was fun. I picked books that were really popular. There are a lot of BookTok books that are much better, and I fully realize it, but I just went with stuff that was on the list that I hadn't read yet, things that I could have a good time making fun of, which I know is bad, but that's kind of how I chose the list. I'm not saying all BookTok books are bad. That's definitely not true. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What are your thoughts? Love to know them. Have a lovely day.